be alarmed. The woman who just screamed is perfectly quiet now.
Boris Karloff scared the hell out of me.
You're afraid of me, aren't you?
He's got this wonderful kind of voice that takes you in.
I leave my secret with you. It is all there.
He was underrated as an actor because his fame was so enormous.
Boris Karloff, the one, the only king of monsters.
My father really was a gentle soul. Yeah, I don't think he scared anybody. Not in real life, he never did.
Boris Karloff. Durante la mayor parte del siglo XX, el nombre de Boris Karloff fue sinónimo de terror. Pero el actor que se hizo famoso por interpretar al monstruo Frankenstein era en realidad un educado caballero británico. Su nombre de pila era William Henry Pratt y había nacido el 23 de noviembre de 1887 en Camberwell, un suburbio de Londres. Billy Pratt, el menor de los 9 hijos de Edward John Pratt Jr. y su esposa Eliza, era el heredero de un heterogéneo legado, reflejo del largo historial de su padre en el servicio diplomático británico.
Most of his family were all very, very high in the British government. They were all government servants. And his father had been working as some member of the government in India, which one assumes is where he met his mother. He was very, very dark, and his family was East Indian on his mother's side. And he always had this very heavy color. And in a British school, you know, with his coloring, friends used to say, you know, you must spend an awful lot of time in the sun. And how do you get that tan? And Boris always said, well, plenty of gin and a tight collar, and that's the way I got it.
Cuando John Pratt abandonó a su familia para marcharse a Francia, Billy, de 5 años, quedó al cuidado de su madre y de sus hermanos mayores. Pero la muerte de su madre, Eliza, 2 años más tarde, causaría en el niño un fuerte impacto emocional del que nunca se recuperaría.
I don't think he had a warm, cuddly childhood or family life. I think that his older brothers would come home and would knock him about a bit and go off again. And I don't think he had fond memories, and he never talked about it.
Luego de interpretar al Rey Demonio en un montaje de La Cenicienta, Billy, de 9 años, quedó fascinado con el teatro. Pero sería la original interpretación de Gerald du Maurier en el papel del Capitán Garfio en Peter Pan, años más tarde, lo que despertaría el interés del joven en la actuación.
All he wanted to do was to become an actor, and he did whatever it took to pursue that lifelong dream.
Pese a la presión de su familia para que entrara en el servicio diplomático, Billy Pratt abandonó la Universidad de Londres. A los 21 años de edad, Billy dispuso de su modesta herencia y se embarcó en el Emperatriz de Inglaterra en busca de una nueva vida y lejos de su severa familia. Al llegar a Montreal, Canadá, el 17 de mayo de 1909, el aspirante actor se dirigió al oeste, donde trabajó como peón y jornalero. Un año después, una compañía de teatro itinerante de la Columbia Británica, la Jean Russell Players, contrató como actor a Billy, quien les dijo que era un actor experimentado. Fue aquí donde por primera vez William Henry Pratt adoptó el nombre artístico de Boris Karloff. El apellido, afirmaba él, lo tomé de un nombre ruso en mi familia materna, y Boris de por allí.
My father never took Boris Karloff legally. It was an AKA. All his legal papers were signed William Henry Pratt, AKA Boris Karloff. His contracts were signed Boris Karloff. I don't know if that makes him legal or illegal.
Pero la incipiente carrera de Boris se vio interrumpida en Regina, Saskatchewan. En el verano de 1912, un devastador tornado destruyó el pueblo, acabó con la vida de 41 personas y dejó en ruinas el teatro y el escenario de la compañía. Karloff retomó sus empleos menores hasta que otra compañía de teatro, la Harry St. Clair Players, lo contrató por 3 temporadas. Durante estos años, se dice que Boris contrajo matrimonio con una actriz canadiense de nombre Olive de Wilton, pero no queda registro alguno de esta relación. Después de emigrar a Estados Unidos en 1913, Boris abandonó la compañía St. Clair Players y tras una pasantía teatral en Chicago, se estableció en Los Ángeles, sede de una industria cinematográfica que se desarrollaba vertiginosamente. Su primer trabajo en la pantalla grande fue en 1918 como extra en la cinta His Majesty the American, protagonizada por Douglas Fairbanks. Boris actuaría en otras películas, entre ellas El último de los mohicanos, donde tuvo un papel importante. Pero la vida en Hollywood no era fácil, incluso para alguien tan versátil como Boris Karloff.
He was absolutely poverty-stricken and hungry most of the time, but he had what he always referred to as the fire in his belly for the craft. He just had it. And he said his favorite thing was canned mulligatawny soup, because he would make one meal out of the soup part and another meal out of the vegetables that were in it. It was that bad. He was starving most of the time.
Durante esta época, el joven Karloff se casó y divorció en otras 2 ocasiones. En julio de 1920, con una músico llamada Montana Lorena Williams, y en febrero de 1924 con Helene Vivian Soule, una bailarina y actriz de Hollywood.
Those were days when he was learning his trade. He was as often, I think, driving a truck, loading a truck, or unloading a freight car as much as he was making films in those days to make ends meet.
Ya para estos años, a Boris se le asignaban papeles con regularidad, la mayoría de ellos pequeñas partes como actor de carácter y villano. Debido a sus inquietantes ojos oscuros y a su exótico color de piel, a Boris se le asignaban papeles que iban desde jeques árabes y mafiosos hasta mesoneros marroquíes, como en esta cinta muda descubierta hace poco tiempo llamada Francotiradores.
He could be very villainous. He could be debonair. He could be handsome. He could be ugly. He could do a lot of things with very little makeup, and so he was a very versatile actor.
El personaje más importante encarnado por Karloff hasta ese momento había sido el de un macabro hipnotizador en la película The Bells, junto a Lionel Barrymore, un papel aparentemente inspirado en el clásico de horror del expresionismo alemán, El gabinete del Dr. Caligari. En 1928, la llegada del sonido al mundo del cine dejaría en evidencia otro marcado rasgo de Karloff.
Art thou prepared for the execution?
Somebody said, what about his lisp?
Summon the executioner.
But he could do most anything with his voice. Be very sinister, but also be very soothing, very pleasant, very cultured.
2 años después, Boris contrajo nupcias, esta vez con una mujer llamada Dorothy Stein.
She was a librarian, and he had just begun to get some better parts when they married. But he was an unknown.
Para un actor de carácter como Boris Karloff, no existía quizá ningún héroe superior a Lon Chaney. Su talento para concebir personajes grotescos y caracterizaciones aterradoras lo convirtieron en una de las primeras estrellas de la pantalla grande. Pero mientras se preparaba para el papel de Drácula en la versión para cine que Studios Universal hacía de la exitosa obra de teatro, a Chaney se le diagnosticó cáncer de garganta, lo que le provocó la muerte en 1930. Desesperado por encontrar un sucesor a su hombre de los 1000 rostros, Studios Universal decidió probar suerte con el actor húngaro que interpretaba a Drácula en Broadway, Bela Lugosi.
I am Dracula.
Dracula, the original terrifying story of a man who lived after death.
El gran éxito de la película convirtió al extravagante actor en una estrella internacional. Studios Universal anunció de inmediato que Lugosi, considerado ahora el nuevo Lon Chaney, protagonizaría una adaptación para el cine de una pieza maestra de la literatura gótica, Frankenstein.
He thought that a script which had virtually no dialogue at all was not something he wanted to do. And he also realized that the makeup was so heavy that his abilities as an actor wouldn't be used the way that he thought they should, and he turned down the role.
Ante la negativa de Lugosi, los ejecutivos de Universal le asignaron la tarea de buscar al monstruo a un nuevo director, el brillante y excéntrico James Whale. En su búsqueda de un actor que interpretara convincentemente el papel de una criatura nacida a partir de partes humanas de convictos muertos, Whale fijó su atención en un actor de 43 años que despertaba el interés de Hollywood en el drama The Criminal Code, dirigido por Howard Hawks.
Howard Hawks picked Karloff to play the same part he'd done on the stage. He was so impressed with him. And the character of Galloway, you can see the Frankenstein monster for the first time.
Durante un encuentro casual con Boris en los estudios Universal, se cree que Whale dijo: "Su rostro, señor Karloff, tiene interesantes posibilidades". Cuando Boris Karloff, de 43 años, aceptó el papel del monstruo en Frankenstein, nunca imaginó el impacto que la película tendría en su vida y en el público.
When Frankenstein was first released, it was as gigantic an onslaught as like E.T. Nothing had ever been seen like it.
Throw the switches.
A la escena en la que el monstruo cobra vida, aún se le considera uno de los momentos inolvidables de la historia del cine.
When we first see this scarred hand and Colin Clive saying it's moving.
It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Well, I thought it was just the greatest picturization of fantasy and horror that I had ever seen. Karloff brought a real pathos to it. There's the sequence which unfortunately was excised from the film for many, many years, where the monster's down by the lake with the little girl.
See how mine floats?
She shows him a little game that she can take a daisy and throw it in the lake and it floats, and he likes that. But eventually they run out of daisies and he's, more, this is fun. And so you sort of see a gleam in his eye. Well, wait a minute, daisies float. I guess little girls float.
No, you're hurting me! No!
Boris Karloff himself had kind of a negative reaction to that scene. He felt that it made him appear rather monstrous, but I don't see any evil intent at all. He doesn't do it out of malice, evil, anything of that nature, just out of naivete.
I became aware of the humanity of somebody who was deformed or a creature. And I think probably that was the most moving thing about Frankenstein.
El maquillaje, uno de los mejores de todos los tiempos, le agregó mucha más fuerza a la caracterización del personaje. Su creador fue el legendario maquillador Jack Pierce.
Jack Pierce certainly conceived it, but Karloff added to it. He added the eyelids that gave the creature a more dead look. He took out a part of his teeth to give it an indenture into his cheek, giving an added dimension to that facial look of the monster.
Para darle al monstruo su apariencia característica, se empleó estopilla, masilla y una serie de sustancias químicas tóxicas. El minucioso proceso de maquillaje tomaba más de 4 horas y debía hacerse desde cero diariamente.
Boris would have to start the makeup at 4 in the morning, and Boris never had any breakfast except something horrible to me, which was orange juice with 2 raw eggs thrown into it. And the combination of a Karloff makeup and raw eggs and orange juice was not attractive.
Para darle vida a su personaje, Karloff debió pagar un alto precio. Enfundado en un pesado traje acolchado de 29 kilogramos y con unas botas de 13 kilogramos, el actor comenzó a padecer de un dolor de espalda crónico que lo obligó a someterse a un tratamiento por problemas en su columna vertebral. Aunque en los créditos iniciales de la película su personaje aparece bajo un ambiguo signo de interrogación, Boris Karloff se había convertido en una superestrella. El actor de carácter, quien había pasado un cuarto de siglo en la oscuridad, era ahora tan famoso que en los carteles de las películas solo aparecía su apellido. Un honor reservado previamente para inmortales de la pantalla grande como Valentino, Barrymore y Garbo.
The Mummy. Is it dead or alive? Human or inhuman? You'll know. You'll see. There's nothing on earth like the Mummy.
You will not remember what I show you now, and yet I shall awaken memories of love and crime and death.
En 1933, tras una ausencia de casi 25 años, Boris Karloff regresó a su natal Inglaterra para filmar El Resucitado, la primera película británica de horror en la era del cine sonoro. Durante este viaje, el antiguo Billy Pratt se reunió nuevamente con 3 de sus 9 hermanos que aún estaban con vida, quienes debían aceptar que la oveja negra de su familia había triunfado. De vuelta en Hollywood, y ahora siendo un actor muy cotizado, Boris amplió sus horizontes como actor con interpretaciones variadas y memorables, como el fanático religioso en La Patrulla Perdida de John Ford, o como el aristócrata antisemita en La Casa de los Rothschild.
Your bid was received, Mr. Rothschild. But to put it as delicately as possible, it was thrown out, shall we say, on a technicality.
You mean, in brief, I am a Jew?
Likewise, in brief, I do.
Para 1934, Studios Universal tenía bajo contrato a sus 2 principales estrellas del cine de horror. Claro que no perdió tiempo para juntar a Boris Karloff y Bela Lugosi en una serie de películas consideradas hoy clásicos.
You're poisoned. Poisoned. And everyone I touch is poisoned. They die.
Según los rumores de la prensa, Karloff era el que se llevaba la mejor parte de esta unión y era más versátil que su colega, quien aún conservaba su marcado acento húngaro. Incluso algunos especulaban que a Lugosi le disgustaba la popularidad cada vez más creciente de Karloff.
Their professional relationship, as far as my dad told me, was one of respect for each other. My father did have some remorse about turning down the Frankenstein role, but that was the only competition among them. There was no personal animosity between my dad and Boris Karloff.
Ready for the test, Dracula? I'm ready, Frankenstein. Then let us begin. You understand, Bela, don't you? That the one who wins this little game of chess is to lead the parade at the Film Stars Frolic. Okay, Boris. Your move. Right.
En realidad, Karloff no odiaba a nadie y se le conocía como una persona muy generosa.
I was working as a reader at Selznick, and he said, "You shouldn't be a reader, you should be a writer." And I said, well, one of these days I'll get a typewriter and I'll try. And the next day a typewriter arrived by the front door.
Si bien en la pantalla grande encarnaba a personajes aterradores, en la vida real, Karloff era un hombre de firmes convicciones sociales y políticas.
Very liberal, very, very liberal gentleman. He couldn't stand injustice.
Debido al dolor físico que padeció mientras filmaba Frankenstein, Karloff sabía mejor que nadie de las duras exigencias que se le solían hacer a sus colegas. Su experiencia lo hizo convertirse en activista por los derechos de los actores y fue él uno de los principales organizadores de su sindicato.
And at that time, that was a professionally dangerous thing to be involved with. It was a union, and it was not popular with the studios at all.
It was literally dangerous. They had to make calls from public telephones, and they had to meet in secret and not leave their cars outside the house of the others. They'd have to park blocks away because it was that dangerous to form a guild at that time.
He was a man of deep conviction and great passions. He was proud of his involvement with it, really proud.
En su hogar, Boris era fiel reflejo de la dignidad y los gustos de un cultivado caballero inglés.
He was a passionate, avid reader. His favorite author was Conrad. His real passion was cricket. I mean, he just lived and breathed cricket. In his younger days, he played tennis. He loved gardening.
My picture in my mind of Boris always is out watering his roses, wearing what he called me-wickies, which there was apparently shorts. And he used to go out with his wickies and a top hat to water the roses, and it was quite a sight.
En 1935, Boris se puso de nuevo el traje de Frankenstein para filmar La novia de Frankenstein, una de las pocas secuelas de Hollywood a la que se le considera superior a la versión original. Aunque el director James Whale la había concebido como una comedia de humor negro y satírico, Studios Universal hizo énfasis al anunciar que en esta versión el monstruo hablaba.
You make man like me? No. Woman
moment. Friend. Why?
Pero Karloff no estaba de acuerdo con hacer hablar al monstruo, pues sentía que ese hecho comprometía la integridad de su caracterización original. Por suerte, al público le agradó la idea, y la película se convirtió en una sensación internacional. Pero el mercado cinematográfico en el mundo estaba cambiando. Los vientos de guerra que soplaban en Europa hicieron que el público temiera por el efecto que las películas de horror de Hollywood pudiera tener sobre la moral de los ciudadanos. La poderosa Junta de Censores Cinematográficos del Reino Unido amenazó con un embargo, lo que llevó a los temerosos ejecutivos de Hollywood a dejar de producir películas de horror, en las que casualmente se destacaba Boris Karloff.
You haven't changed, have you? But I have.
Su trabajo se redujo a la mitad durante casi 3 años.
I will not allow that machine to be used for criminal purposes.
Ahora Karloff solía aparecer en películas de bajo presupuesto que se exhibían como relleno en funciones dobles y matinés infantiles. Los monstruos de principios de los 30 habían perdido popularidad, pero Boris ya había pasado por tiempos difíciles y al igual que el Dr. Frankenstein sabía que todo volvía a la vida tarde o temprano. El 5 de agosto de 1938, en un acto de desesperación, el propietario de un teatro de Los Ángeles, al borde de la bancarrota, proyectó en cartelera doble las películas Frankenstein y Drácula. La idea causó sensación. Boris Karloff estaba de vuelta. El actor de 50 años aceptó por tercera vez someterse a los rigores del maquillaje para encarnar al monstruo.
Edison, turn on the generator. Produced on a vast scale, Son of Frankenstein presents the most fearsome cast in the history of the screen.
These candid shots of the Son of Frankenstein is the only color footage of my father in the Frankenstein makeup. It shows him clowning around on the set with Jack Pierce, the genius makeup artist. And the nice thing is it shows my father's humor and his gentleness of spirit coming through, because to clown around in that makeup must not have been very comfortable to do.
Aunque debía promocionar la película, Karloff sentía que El hijo de Frankenstein era una burda imitación de las películas que le precedían. Pero Boris dejó su decepción a un lado con el nacimiento de su primer y único hijo, una niña de nombre Sarah Jane, nacida el 23 de noviembre de 1938.
I was born on my father's birthday, which makes me probably the most expensive birthday present he ever got.
Pese al éxito de El hijo de Frankenstein, Boris se sentía cada vez más decepcionado con los papeles que le ofrecían. Ansioso de nuevos retos, Karloff aceptó la oferta de los productores de teatro Howard Lindsay y Russell Crowe para protagonizar su primera obra en Broadway, una comedia de humor negro titulada Arsenic and Old Lace. Su personaje de John Brewster, un homicida idéntico físicamente a cierto actor de nombre Boris Karloff, estaba hecho para él.
He gets out of a chest by a window, and when he gets out saying something about he looks like Boris Karloff, the audience just absolutely broke up. He was hilarious.
Arsenic and Old Lace se convirtió en la obra con más tiempo en cartelera en la historia del teatro estadounidense. El montaje también consolidó a Boris Karloff como gran actor y superestrella.
Here, in the midst of gaiety and splendor, lurks a monster of psychological horror.
Tonight you give your voice and your will to me.
Starring the terrorizing star of Arsenic and Old Lace, Boris Karloff.
Pese a su anunciado retorno a estudios Universal con la cinta The Climax, Boris solo recibía ofertas para largometrajes de suspenso de bajo presupuesto, como La casa de Frankenstein, en la que aparece no como el monstruo, sino como su creador.
I'm going to give that brain of yours a new home in the skull of the Frankenstein monster.
Por supuesto, en ocasiones se producían películas de alta calidad con bajos presupuestos, como lo descubrió Boris al firmar con estudios RKO y el productor Val Lewton, a fin de actuar en varias cintas de suspenso de bajo presupuesto pero de gran factura.
Karloff's words were, "Val Lewton rescued my soul." He and Val Lewton were both well-educated, literate men, and they wanted to present literate horror films.
Su primer intento fue una cinta basada en una novela de Robert Louis Stevenson, El usurpador de cadáveres, donde Karloff interpretaba a John Gray, un homicida y ladrón de tumbas. Allí Karloff actuó por última vez al lado de su viejo amigo Bela Lugosi.
You and I should work together.
You mean we would sell the bodies to the doctors together? Dig them up.
There'll be no digging. The kirkyards are too well guarded.
Boris was very, very keen to do this particular role, because he realized that this was his chance to show that he really was a top actor and not just some kind of a man to play monsters. And that was, I think, what drove him to want to do the film and to work as hard as he did it. He was not particularly well. He was having a lot of back problems, but he just buried that and just gave every bit of himself possible.
Luego de El usurpador de cadáveres, Karloff volvió a trabajar al lado de Val Lewton en dos de las películas de mayor suspenso en los años 40, La Isla de los Muertos y Bedlam, al lado de Anna Lee.
It was the story of St. Mary's of Bethlehem Hospital in London, which is still a hospital for the insane. And I remember Boris used to get quite irritated when people called it a horror picture, because he said it's not a horror picture, it's a historical picture, which it was.
Las frustraciones que Karloff sentía al verse encasillado como el principal monstruo de Hollywood pasaron a un segundo plano al enfrentar una grave crisis en su vida personal. Boris y su esposa estaban a punto de separarse, algo que no sabían ni sus amigos más cercanos.
I don't have the faintest clue what went wrong, but at the same time he married my stepmother the day after the divorce was final.
El 11 de abril de 1946, Boris Karloff se casó por quinta vez. Su nueva esposa era Evelyn Hope Helmore, una amiga íntima de la familia Karloff.
Evie was a very charming, very attractive, very humorous lady, and I couldn't have been more surprised. You know, this was Dorothy's best friend. It was around the house all the time, and it stunned me. Then I got used to it. And she took superb care of him, and she helped him in his work, and I think they loved each other a great deal.
Durante los años de la posguerra, mientras los monstruos de la era nuclear atacaban las pantallas de cine, Boris se dedicó a su primer amor, el teatro. De vuelta en Broadway, Karloff brindó actuaciones dignas de elogio en obras como The Linden Tree, The Shop at Sly Corner y en Peter Pan, pieza en la que interpretó al personaje que lo inspiró a ser actor, su amado Capitán Garfio. Mientras interpretaba al archienemigo del chico que nunca crecería, Karloff se hizo con una nueva y creciente legión de admiradores, los niños. Lejos de asustarlos, Boris gozaba de gran popularidad entre el público infantil por ser el amigable narrador de numerosos programas de radio y la voz de los cuentos de hadas.
Hello there, boys and girls. Are you all ready for another story from your Uncle Boris? It's called Little Red Riding Hood. No, Sarah Jane. It is not about a red-headed hood who is taken for a ride. Shame on you for even thinking of such a thing.
Karloff, quien se había quitado la etiqueta de monstruo de Hollywood y se encaminaba a convertirse en ícono cultural, recibió elogios de la crítica y una nominación a los premios Tony por su brillante interpretación del arzobispo Cochon, el torturador de Juana de Arco, en la pieza The Lark de 1955. Sus colegas lo consideraban ahora un primer actor.
He had played on the stage with great distinction. He was Mr. Karloff. I mean, he was Mr. Karloff. But he was highly respected.
Pero Boris no se dormía en los laureles. Pese a sus cada vez más serios problemas físicos, el actor de 64 años buscó nuevos retos en un floreciente y nuevo medio, la televisión.
I had, in the late 50s, done a live television show with him, Playhouse 90, which was Heart of Darkness, and he played Kurtz.
I know you. Take my hand. Quickly.
And I'll never forget him because he was arthritic. He was in great pain, and he would never ever complain. And it's just very indicative of what he was like.
My ivory, my jungle, my earth, my sun.
En una cinta basada en la novela de Joseph Conrad, su autor favorito, Karloff transmitió en su papel de un demente líder selvático una gran carga de emoción y talento. Su actuación solo sería igualada 20 años después por la de Marlon Brando en Apocalypse Now, de Francis Ford Coppola.
Horror. The horror.
Pero justo cuando Karloff sorprendía a los televidentes con la riqueza y vitalidad de sus numerosas actuaciones, la televisión pronto le daría una gran sorpresa a Boris. Boris, quien disfrutaba ahora de una vida apacible y de una gran privacidad en los departamentos Dakota de Nueva York, fue tomado completamente por sorpresa cuando su amigo Ralph Edwards le jugó una broma una noche de 1958.
Our honored guest, whom we're about to surprise tonight, is known to all of you as one of the truly great and beloved stars of the theater, motion pictures, radio, and television. Pan the camera quickly, please. He's not coming through those doors because he's seated right there innocently. Tonight, this is your life, Boris Karloff.
He had a moment when they turned the cameras on him, and he in fact realized this was his life.
Boris, I think we really put the... Oh, my.
I think my father was horrified.
Hiya, Boris.
He was committed to his privacy.
What do you remember about Boris at the Majestic Theater back in 1919 and 20, Jim?
I can still see Boris sitting in the dressing room hour after hour, working with grease paint, nose putty, crepe hair, and wigs, trying to perfect the art of changing his appearance.
Anything to cover myself up, in other words.
He didn't talk about himself. He hated it. He hated prying into his past. Absolutely hated it. He was very shy and very quiet.
While waiting for that first acting job, how did you make a living?
Well, I cleared land, shoveled coal, laid streetcar tracks, did all sorts of things.
My father never complained about anything. Consequently, had he talked about the difficult periods in his life, I think to him it would have been grousing.
The director of the workshop in Anchorage, Alaska, Frank Brink.
He had a lot of inner pride, but he was not a boastful man.
From the very beginning, Boris became part of the group. Not a star, mind you, Ralph, but just one of us. And when he found out that we were trying to raise the funds, I'm going to tell it because it needs to be told. When he discovered we were trying to raise the funds to build our own theater, he turned over every penny of his percentage of the profits to our building fund.
I know he was genuinely pleased to see Jack Pierce.
The best makeup man in the world.
Thank you.
I owe him a lot.
This Is Your Life really did a marvelous job in pulling together some special people in my father's life.
From San Francisco, your daughter, Sarah Jane.
Pero a Boris Karloff le resultó muy difícil dejar atrás el pasado. Estudios Universal había empezado a exhibir en televisión sus películas clásicas de monstruos en una serie denominada El Teatro del Horror. La fama de El Teatro del Horror hizo que los monstruos gozaran de una popularidad inédita hasta entonces. Los presentadores de programas del género como Vampira se convirtieron en figuras e incluso Bobby Boris Pickett compuso una exitosa canción llamada Puré de Monstruos. La compañía Plásticos Aurora lanzó una línea de monstruos de juguete armables y la revista Famous Monsters se vendía en todo Estados Unidos.
Kids were seeing a number of monster movies, and that was whetting their appetite. So I created the world's first film monster magazine to show them the artistry of Karloff, or what the man behind the image was really like.
Boris Karloff, King of Monsters.
Ahora, con más de 70 años y más cotizado que nunca, Boris Karloff era todo un rey. Aparecía en películas de horror como Frankenstein 1970, filmada en 1958, y en series de suspenso en la televisión.
Other screams will soon be heard. Whose? Perhaps yours.
Boris también mostraba su lado más tierno en numerosos programas de variedades.
I'm very happy to welcome our special guest, Mr. Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff was a guest star when I was just starting out, and we did a sketch together. I think I was a librarian or something. He was just a mild-mannered man who came in to borrow a book, and of course he scared the hell out of me.
I really wish you wouldn't do that. It frightens me.
And he was very, very unscary in person.
You're making the mistake of mixing me up with the parts that I play in films. In real life, my great interest is in gardening. Why, only today I planted a new flower bed.
Who's under it?
He knew that he was typecast. He made friends with the monster. He always thought he was lucky to be working.
En 1962, Karloff se vistió y maquilló por última vez de Frankenstein para actuar al lado de sus colegas maestros del horror Peter Lorre y Lon Chaney Jr. El trío aparecería en un episodio de la serie Carretera 66 en Halloween. Y en el cine, Karloff formó otro infame trío.
True terror is the soft, cold caress of the raven's wing.
Con El Cuervo y La Comedia del Terror, un par de comedias endemoniadamente divertidas al lado de Vincent Price y Peter Lorre, Boris se burlaba una vez más de su imagen en la pantalla grande. Pero en Domingo Negro de Mario Bava, Karloff demostró que aún era capaz de causar terror en el primer papel de vampiro de su carrera.
I am hungry.
Lo que los Beatles fueron para la música, Boris lo fue para los monstruos. Había títeres de Boris y robots de Boris. Boris incluso hizo de travesti en el programa de televisión The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., en el que encarnó a la asesina Madre Muffin.
I called him and told him, what does he think of doing a woman? He thought it was ripping. He thought that would be jolly. And in the makeup chair, looking in the mirror, all dressed up with the rig on, he said, I look like a $2 whore. And everybody, of course, broke up.
El mundo de la publicidad también aprovechó el sentido del humor de Boris al utilizarlo para vender de todo, desde salsa hasta encendedores.
If your lighter can't do half the things the Ronson Comet can, get one and have your own torture test.
En 1967, Boris brindó una de las mejores y más sentidas interpretaciones de su carrera al hacer la voz de El Grinch que se robó la Navidad.
Then he growled with his Grinch fingers, nervously drumming. I must find some way to keep Christmas from coming.
Basado en el libro del Dr. Seuss y adaptado por el dibujante y director Chuck Jones, El Grinch que se robó la Navidad se convirtió de inmediato en un clásico navideño y le valió a Boris Karloff un premio Grammy por su participación en la banda sonora de la película.
He said, if I should win, why don't you accept the prize, put it on your desk, and keep it for me? I did. Boris finally came to the office, and I said, there it is, Boris, pointing to it. There's the Grammy. And he said, it looks like a doorstop. And with that, he picked it up, opened my office door into the reception room, left it open, and put it on the floor as a doorstop. It stayed there for a long, long time, because I'm sentimental when it comes to people like Boris.
Boris soportaba un constante dolor físico, algo que sus admiradores ignoraban. Sufría de enfisema y de una artritis debilitante. Sus amigos le rogaban que se retirara, pero esa idea no cruzaba por su mente.
The last 10 years of his life, his health was terrible, just terrible. And he would be on the set in a wheelchair. He'd have an oxygen tank nearby. He was a real trooper. He really was.
Aunque se sentía satisfecho con su imagen y disfrutaba del amor de su familia, amigos y admiradores, Boris Karloff aguardaba por una nueva oportunidad para demostrarle al mundo que él era más que una simple gárgola en la pantalla grande. Imaginen su sorpresa cuando le llegó esa oportunidad.
Man has a rifle. My God, Jenny.
En Targets, una cruda y descarnada historia acerca de la violencia contemporánea, Karloff encarnaba a un olvidado actor de películas de horror que se cruza en el camino de un asesino en serie.
He did work with us quite a bit on it because it was written for him. I think he just recognized what he could bring to it, crossing the line between who he was and what people believed he was.
The part is you.
Sammy, you're a sweet boy, but you can't possibly understand what it feels like to be me. I'm an antique, out of date.
Since this character is very much like me, he says, do I have to say such terrible things about myself? I said, my feeling, Boris, is that the more terrible things you say about yourself, the more the audience will say, no, it's not true, we don't agree. He said, well, I hope so. He said, they might just agree, he said.
Oh, Sammy, what's the use? Mr. Boogeyman, King of Blood, they used to call me. Marx Brothers make you laugh, Garbo makes you weep, Orlock makes you scream.
My father is essentially playing himself, And my father felt that the horror was happening on the streets, not up on the screen, that the way man was treating man was the real horror of today's world. And that really is what that film was all about.
Targets representó un triunfo personal y profesional para Karloff, quien la consideró su última película, pese a trabajar un año más luego de terminarla.
He never considered retiring or quitting. He just wanted to work. It's what he did, it's what he loved to do. And he did it almost until the day he died.
Tras una aparición televisiva en 1968, Boris regresó a su casa en Londres, donde fue hospitalizado a causa de una infección respiratoria.
He was fading fast, and I dreamed up one of my typical agent-type lies. I told him how I had this picture in the work for him, and he was going to put on the harness again and go to work. Made him feel good. I wanted him to go out on top.
El actor de 81 años, que había aparecido en más de 200 obras de teatro, cine y televisión, falleció el 2 de febrero de 1969. Pero para los millones de admiradores que guardaron luto alrededor del mundo, Boris Karloff nunca murió. Su memoria perdura, al tiempo que una generación tras otra redescubre el legado de Karloff y sus películas.
The devotion that people still have to my father's memory, they're just incredible.
Sara, la hija de Boris, ha organizado una serie de apariciones públicas a fin de mantener vivo el nombre Karloff. A ella se han unido los hijos de dos de los actores más famosos que actuaron al lado de Boris, Bela Lugosi y Lon Chaney.
Bela Jr. and Ron Chaney and I go to conventions and meet people and shake hands and sign autographs. The fans are anxious to tell things that they wish they'd had an opportunity to tell my father, and they are delighted to be able to tell someone close to my father. Some of them are grown people, and some are still youngsters who are becoming familiar with my father's works. Do you know who that is? Who?
Frankenstein.
Right. Would you believe that was my father? You'd believe it? We made a trip recently to Florida, to Universal Studios, and we did some PR work for them.
Your big smile, ready?
It's great to see my father's face. He was all over the place.
Daddy.
He was on caps and T-shirts and masks and the videos. No one would be more amazed than my father at his continuing fame and popularity and the intense endearment with which he is regarded by his fans and by the people who knew him.
It was only when I met him and then worked with him, I realized how much more there was to it than just those monster creatures that he had been identified with so strongly.
He could have worked in any kind of picture. He would still have been an excellent actor.
He was kind of a genie out of Aladdin's lamp to me, a magic man.
When I think about Boris, the main thing I think of is a kind of dignity and warmth that he projected.
He was such an elegant man. He took everything with such patience.
The kindest and dearest man I've ever known. A really lovely human being.
A gentleman, a real gentle man.
There's a commemorative plaque that was placed after Boris's death at St. Paul's Covent Garden in London, known as the Actors' Church. And the lines were, "He nothing common did or mean upon that memorable scene." That sums up Boris Karloff.